Oh, well, as I have mentioned, arrival refers to the length of time the interior of our dough needs to reach a final temperature at the end of the baking process. Even if we reach 200 degrees Fahrenheit when the loaf exits the oven, we can't really know exactly for how long it has actually resided in that final bake-out zone over that arrival temperature. While it may vary per product, normally the time spent in the bake-out zone needs to be no less than 15 to 20% of your bake time. The higher the arrival value, or that is the slower we reach the arrival temperature, the higher the moisture content of the crumb will be, and thus the higher the microbial instability and chances for mold growth, and thus the need of mold inhibitors or preservatives in formulation. Also, cooling time will need to be longer, and we will have a greater likelihood of issues the slicers due to gumming.
It'll gum up the slicers, yeah.
On the other hand, the lower the arrival value, the lower the water activity in the bread. And this can be good because having longer bake-out times helps in extending mold-free shelf life. However, extremely early arrivals would cause higher staling rates and result in dryness and crumbliness.
Very good.
So we designed the system as a generic system that could handle up to 8 sensors. So as long as we have a couple basic sensors such as temperature, we could scale it to meet just about any need.
So like you could even monitor the bearings in a mixer, for example, if you know what the temperature ranges normally should be. Once you've established that, you could see if the bearings are getting too hot and like need grease or wearing down too much or something like that.
Yeah,
that is cool. Yeah,
exactly. A lot of the way the system works is just simply getting a data profile for the system, and then looking at how that data profile changes over time.
Interesting. Very good.
As Chris mentions there, a lot of that stuff we actually, I'll say, calibrate it on installation. So we'll put it together with every machine's unique. So we'll set upper and lower limits, and then we'll watch it between those limits. So especially you're looking for trends. So yeah, it can be adjusted to almost any machine out there as long as we have sensors and a way to attach it.
Very cool. That's great. That's good to know. Yeah.
No, we've actually done a lot of work to make it so if you're a small mom and pop, you could have 1-2 systems, but if you're a much larger company, you could have multiple sites and systems, and all that will display on the same dashboard. We typically say about 3 users per system, but a company could have 10, 15 systems all over the world or country.
So it's as you mentioned in the presentation, it's web-based. So it's a matter of managing the log on to the web platform as far as the number of users. It's not like a per seat license or something like that.
Correct. But so we have the user name is basically your email address.
Yeah.
And we can specifically put certain users to certain systems or certain users to certain companies. That we have flexibility there to specify which systems this user gets access to.
And I mean, do you provide some initial input advice in terms of best practices? Because, I'm kind of also at the same time hearing you don't want to have dozens of users who, when you have too much then miscommunication, you really want to have a little bit more focused number of users in terms of best practices, who can trigger maintenance or repairs or things like that. Right?
So we typically say you want a maintenance user that's really not a person specifically, but the a general box to field the alarms, because you have 3 shifts of employees and you got all different people. And then you want some kind of maintenance supervisor level. And then you might want a manager level who's looking across multiple plants.
Yep. Okay. So, and then the notifications can go from that user ID to the people who need to have the notifications in that sense.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Very good. Very flexible, very malleable, really, right? In that sense, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, the baking time varies from product to product, depending also on their size and oven type. Baking times for artisan breads can range anywhere from 18 minutes for baguettes to over 30 minutes for bowls. But while both sourdough bread, let's say, and pan bread need to arrive at a final constant temperature of 200 degrees Fahrenheit, we would need to target an arrival temperature occurring between 85 to 90% of the total bake time in sourdough bread, and between 82 to 85 in pan bread. Sourdough bread has a higher moisture content. Yeah. Rye bread should have an arrival around 75 to 80% of the total bake time, and multigrain bread should arrive around 93 to 98%, losing very little moisture. Being able to know what is happening inside our bread using a thermal profiler is so important, because with this we can know exactly how long our dough is residing in that very last bake out zone, and thus we can improve our quality parameters, our crumb quality, shorten cooling times, improve oven outputs, and most.
Yeah. So to determine, I mean, part of it is trial and error, or is managing collecting data, but it's also being aware that your input is going to be a big part of determining your outcome. So high water doughs, like the things like the sourdough or other artisan breads that might be 70, 80, or even close to 90% water absorption in the beginning, is going to obviously have a much later arrival time. It's a longer bake out time than something that is like a rye bread where you have much lower water absorptions.
Well,
in my apprenticeship, we used to say, when it's black, it's done, right?
Right. Well, if we get complaints about bread dryness or crumbliness the very day after it's baked, we can do what they call a hinge test. We can fold a slice of bread on itself, and if it completely breaks at the hinge, then the product is likely to be overbaked. Using a thermal profiler and an accessory such as the breadometer, we can check out if the bake out zone is over 20% of the total baking time. If it is, we are losing too much moisture, and we should bring that down by cutting down the time and temperature in the oven until we get a recommended bake out and bread no longer breaks at the hinge when folded.
And that could simply be also sometimes that the oven is too hot to begin with, that the arrival time is too early, so that then there's a long bake out and you're losing all that moisture, right?
Indeed.
So we have a basic reading chart. We have an IMR, so you can look at the changes on a point-by-point basis. We also have a graph of comparing multiple sensors at the same time. That graph comparing multiple sensors at the same time is really important, especially if you have an event that has impacts in several different sensors. Such as the bearing freezing, with the bearing getting water in it and then freezing. We also provide a weekly report which overlays all the days on the same graph with different colors, so you can see the different trends per day. Some of the things you can see with that would be your, cleanliness of the system directly impacts your belt tensions, as well as your motor powers. And you can also see, does it impact your temperatures? Some customers will run their system and then humidity will build up and they won't be able to cool the same way they were before. So you can see the trend in the changing temperature levels as well.
Yeah, a lot of that's too, Chris, if you can explain it, like we can do two ways. Either we can evaluate the graphs and look at them and give you a heads up, or the users always have access to the graphs, so they can look at it and overlay certain things, like Chris says, temperature and bearing, and see if I hear more bearing noise when I'm cold or when I'm warm, or what it is. You can try to consolidate and analyze the systems so you can correct problems before they occur.
We maintain it for 5 years, or if a customer decides to exit the program, then we would get rid of that data.
Internal conditions of every oven and ambient conditions such as weather and altitude may vary between different bakeries. Knowing what is exactly happening in the oven with a gold standard product is key to consistency across bakeries using different ovens. No matter what the oven type is, we need to transfer energy from the heating sources to the products through conduction, convection, and radiation. Well, running thermal profiles is the most reliable method for objectively adjusting the baking time and establishing the optimum bake temperature for different baked goods when using an oven for multiple products, or when trying to achieve the same S-curves in another bakery. Just perform a few thermal profiles at the gold standard plant and make a note of the yeast kill and arrival points. We could share the digital files of the thermal profiles, and good software such as the Mole Map features an overlay tool for a detailed comparative analysis of all profile features that are enabled. With this information and comparing to the known quality profile, we just implement the same yeast kill and arrival points at the other lines or bakery locations by manipulating the oven convection, the temperature or time with the aid of the software analysis. Yeah, that would be my suggestion.
So the initial setup, well, I'll just discuss how we do it. Initially, we come in and do a site inspection, site survey, measure out all the cable runs, make sure that everything is where the customer expects it to be. Then we come in and install the device. The box is approximately 20 inches by 20 inches. And we run everything, set it up. The user can elect to run other sensors at any time. All we need to do is be notified, and then we can actually change the recipe in our PLC. I also want to note that all the equipment is UL rated, as well as its industrial electronic components. Yes, we did it's a literal web page so that it is anything that can access the web, it should be able to display on.
Yeah.
Well, every time we have a change of ingredients, a change of recipe, or a change of the environmental conditions of the oven, different ingredients can modify properties that we consider to be constant before in the product, and therefore we will require a readjustment of temperatures. If we also modify the recipe in regards of temperatures or baking time, we will be interested in knowing the effects on the product, especially when it comes to the internal temperatures during the first half of the baking step. And well, finally, it is also common that as the different seasons of the year come, we have to modify a bit the baking time or change the temperature conditions to adapt our process against the environmental conditions. For this and many more reasons, it is necessary to measure again in order to make the fine adjustments that we require in our process.
Okay, excellent. That has been fantastic. We're kind of out of time for questions here. If you have further questions on this seminar, please go to the Baking Industry Professionals group on either Facebook or LinkedIn, and you can post your questions there, and we can gladly help field them for you from there to Ashworth or to ECD. Gentlemen, I really appreciate your time today. This has been a very informative and educational session, and I'm sure everybody got a lot out of this. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Gianna, for helping us with all the questions, and we'll see everyone in the next one then.